under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Laxner.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Conklin. Moody.
Here.
Needham.
Here. Under
One
God,
present.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry about that. Make a motion. Yes, it's support. All in favor? All right, consent agenda. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or public may ask that items on the consent agenda be removed and placed as the last item under new business to receive full discussion. Such request will automatically be respected. Commissioner, any requests? Anyone in the public like anything moved? Sandy?
I just have a question, and then on the move it, maybe it was an omission, but the agenda at 7 p.m. the airport advisory board refers to two attachments under A and B, and there's a bit one in the back. So, that one is still and
Was it attachments that was accessible by the meeting, the airport advisory board meeting?
and then the packet refers to it. I did not go to that.
Right. So I had to do that in the past before. What attachments were they done?
Maybe you want to move it?
It's up to you if you have a specific interest.
My interest is in seeing the attachments to my unfinished business A, major capital improvement extensions. Unfinished business B, noise abatement.
Mr. Mayor, she might be referring to 7B.
17.
It is 70, yeah. She's calling out the attachments that are not accessible.
And they weren't, we didn't have the attachments at last meeting. Oh, but that was 2 meetings ago, wasn't it? It's referencing.
Well, actually, what's appropriate at this point is we have a question that's come up on an item on the consent agenda. It should be removed from the consent agenda, then put as an item for discussion later in the meeting, not at this point. But to go to Commissioner Moody's question, I believe Richard did have a couple items that were provided at the last meeting.
Like, I don't believe that it's a consent agenda item. It's under reports of officers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something. Get with me after the meeting and I'll get those attachments where you want to put another. All right, so any consent agenda items requests to be moved? No, okay, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. Any support? Support. All in favor? Before we get into citizen comments, I would just like to give appreciation out to the DPW guys that worked the 4th of July weekend and over the weekend on Boyne Thunder. They came in on the weekend and was working hard to keep the trash removed and the community clean. So I would just like to give that appreciation because I've been seeing a lot of things, a lot of negative comments. And I know quite a few people are getting overwhelmed with the public lynchings. So I just want to make that comment and then we'll go right into citizen comments. This is a time for any citizens to make make comment in regards to non-agenda items. You have a 5-minute time to speak. Is there any public comment? Please state your name, your address.
Hi, I'm Sandra Pritchard, 536 East Linden Street. Just putting out the YouTube of the special marina meeting is missing the first 40 minutes. I'm not sure why. At that special marina meeting, Barb reported out that she departed. And she mentioned two things that were most pressing. And one was that the permit expires in the end of December. And that it takes 3 to 6 months in order to get it approved. And in order for there to be a permit, there needs to be a project defined. Which means there needs to be a design and a specification, which means there needs to be a project awarded and negotiated, which means a bid package needs to be issued, which backs up to a scope of work. Once that's done, then you have materials and construction. I've done a lot of program management in my career of various sorts. We have this little thing, it's non-technical, it's called a lead time bill. And you can work it either forward or backwards, as you wish. And by my estimate, it will take about 27 weeks just to get through the permitting and the award and all of that. Once an award's made, I'm saying anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks for materials, don't know. And perhaps 3 weeks for construction. So in the best of cases, it's 32 weeks, my estimate, or 47 weeks at best. I'm not sure how long this commission is going to wait, or how comfortable you are, I guess, in going into the season, the next season, in that situation. So going from today, 27 weeks is the middle of January. And 47 weeks is the 5th of June. So I don't understand why the outcome of the working session last week, or the 28th, was to come up with an ad hoc committee. You don't have time for that. And basically, you have all the information you really need to go forward with a plan, make a plan to begin this process. It's as simple as picking up the phone and calling the by Marsh. I guarantee you they have multiple designs, and one of which includes staying in the existing footprint. And it could probably attach an estimate to it right away. And you could probably then run the numbers and decide where we are financially and what that means to the community cost. So I understand why, just good God forbid, please don't say that. Senator Pritchard wonders is depressing about the project plan. Anyway, she always says, Sandy doesn't. Anyway, DNR reservations, they need to be done in September. Got to know what configuration you're offering. But the ad hoc committee, what are the deliverables? That was not defined. Who's selecting the members? And what are the criteria? Who's going to be the facilitator? What resources are going to be needed? Some mention of a consultant and information gathering. And best of all, what is their deadline? Ultimately, I guess my number one question to this commission is, what is your deadline for making a decision about what way to go for the marina? And who and when are these questions about the ad hoc committee going to be answered? Who, what, when, where, how? So those are my questions to the commission. I look forward to your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michelle Archer. I reside at 401 West Michigan Avenue. I also have similar questions to Sandy. She's much more articulate and correct in her language use, but I believe my point would be quite clear when I ask what has been done about this ad hoc committee, who's selecting the members, as Sandy said, what are the criteria for which they're being selected to participate, and yes, how long are we going to wait? if I know that Tim mentioned that he follows the social media, one of the most basic formats is the Facebook page. And I've been following it under different groups, comments, and while some are flippant, quick knee-jerk reactions, there are quite a few thoughtful responses in many of the people that comment, and they represent a vast, a grouping of people from our community. Also people that once resided here and that regularly come to return. In particular, one of my friends, Leah Batiste, who lives in Park City, made the comment that they had a hot air balloon thing, which was international in Park City, Utah. But when it became too much of a strain for the city to finance the needed utilities, services for cleanups, housing these people, when the town felt overrun, they decided that it was best in their citizens' interest to stop having this event. I think it would be really sad in some respects to stop Boyne Thunder, but I find it highly embarrassing that the marina that exists is under so poor disrepair. And once again, I'll state, what gives the citizens of this town any confidence that an expanded marina or even a new replaced marina, just exact same size as it already is going to be any better maintained? I think a large portion of the money do need to be raised through a grant process, not necessarily through private citizens that have the means to do so. And there needs to be a well-defined plan of maintenance, a checklist if it needs to be given to whoever's going to be in charge of maintaining this, what checks are going to be made, who's going to keep updated on what the codes are, who's going to see if these jobs actually get done, and who's going to see they're properly provided for in the budget. If we remain small and to best spend our money means to just take out what there is and replace it rather than doing a stopgap electrical, I would even bend to that as long as there's no expansion in size. But if we can't afford to even maintain what we have, maybe we need to just remove it all and return to the natural setting that many people do enjoy. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Moving on to 5. Any questions? Any public comments? Any public comment in regards to correspondence? Moving on to number 6, city manager's report.
I guess I'll pick up where Tim started the meeting earlier with congratulations to all involved in making our recent 4th of July and Boyne Thunder events very successful, and I believe a great reflection on the community. Michael LeMay began work as our new DPW director yesterday, so today was his 2nd day on the job. Missy Schroeder has been hired and is scheduled to begin work in our front office next Monday, July 18th. And we're still seeking applications for the 2nd front office position. Our DPW crews have finished pouring the concrete for the new pedestrian loop in Waterworks Park, which is next to the 1910 building on Division Street. They still have some finished landscaping and other items to work on, but they've made good progress on that project, which was started last fall. The food truck rally returns to Veterans Park this Thursday evening from 6 to 9 p.m. So go there and check out some good food, music, and beverages. And I'll be out of the office beginning tomorrow, the 13th, and returning on the 25th. And while I'm away, Police Chief Spate will be in charge. So if you have any questions on these or other items, I'd be glad to try and address them.
Moving on to item number 7, reports of officers, boards, and standing committees. We already got one comment. I'll follow up with you on that. Sandy, any other comments? Questions?
I just wanted to give the answer. Michelle's question a little bit about letting the marine go back to the natural setting and kind of letting it I'm just, my understanding is, with talking to the city of East Jordan on their marina. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but my understanding is that if there is, we have taken grant money from the state to build our marina and maintain it. We're not allowed to just let it go back to that big marina anymore. The state can come back and make us repay the money that they've given us. We have to maintain a marina of some sort. So, I mean, I give you.
Correct.
Sure, you can say it, but that's not an option. It just, my understanding. Just let it go.
Right.
To natural and not have anything.
But we got your back.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Other,
I don't believe there's anybody in this room.
I'm not saying that's what I want.
No, no, I'm not saying
It
that.
can't be changed.
All right, so moving on, since there's no questions in regards to agenda item 7. Agenda item 8, old business, there's nothing there. We're going to move right on to agenda item 9, new business. First agenda item A is property at 820 Main Street, Boyne City. Consider request from Executive Director, Northern Homes CDC to approve the transfer of 2 lots at 635 East Main Street to the Charlotte County Land Bank to be included in the Brownfield redevelopment.
Jamie is the Executive Director of Northern Homes Community Development Corporation, and I also live in Boyne City at 847 West Division Street. You've got my memo in front of you there, but just to kind of briefly go through it. This whole project is an outcome from the meetings that were held about the need for housing in Boyne City for locals. That was held in 2019 and 2020 before COVID happened. One of the ideas that came out of that meeting was being able to use land banks and brownfield redevelopment authorities to provide some funding to help reduce the construction costs and therefore reduce the cost to the final home buyer. Around the same time, the Charlotte County Land Bank tax foreclosure on property at 820 East Main Street. We have a survey of that property done, and it is large enough that it can be subdivided into 3 lots. So combining those 3 lots with the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority tax increment financing was kind of the beginning point for this project. It was also brought to my attention that the city of Boyne City owns 2 additional lots on Main Street, closer to Boyne Avenue. And the idea came up of combining those with the other 3 lots for a 5-lot construction project. So the plan would be to build 5 single-family homes, sell them to households with incomes up to 120% of the area median income based on family size, and then use the TIP financing to help pay some of the costs and reduce the final cost to the home buyer. And another way to preserve that property for locals for the long term from buyer to buyer to buyer is to put it into our community land trust program. So that every time the property changes hands, we make sure that it is a local resident and that it is sold at an affordable rate. And all of those restrictions are laid out in the ground lease. So Northern Homes would continue to own the land. We only sell the improvements. And then every time the property is sold, the owner seller has to follow the restrictions that are in the ground lease. This whole project was brought to the Boyne City Commission before in October of 2021. And at that point, the city said that they would be interested in also partnering on this project through providing the TIP subsidy up front and then getting reimbursed over time from the collection of taxes. We've also been talking with the county on this, and they are very firm on wanting to keep this as a short time period, more like 7 to 10 years. A TIP project can go for as long as 30 years. But we would be working on the financing of it and the pro forma to make sure that it gets done within a 7 to 10 year time frame. If there is quite a few meetings that need to be done and plans that need to be approved to go through this whole process. We're at the very beginning of it. So now would be a good time if the city does want to include their two properties in this project to, do it at this point. That's all I have today.
Do you have any comments about your here for this agenda item as well, like this?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't introduce you.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
No, I'm happy to answer any questions about kind of brownfield activities.
Okay.
Thank you.
You probably should still introduce.
Yeah. This is Matt McClellan. He's with Owl Lobby. Do I have the right one?
Yeah, I'm actually new, very independent, but I represent the county brownfield redevelopment authority as their consultant. So we're through the brownfield process for that. I represent the county brownfield authority as well as the city. The city does have to concur with the brownfield plan, so there's a role for the city.
Could you give a basic description of what?
Sure. Sure.
Great.
Is that okay? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So again, I'm Matt McClellan, Matt Consulting Service. I represented the county brownfield authority, helped establish it in 2000, a long time ago. But I've worked with the community with all the brownfield plans that have one Water Street, Lake Street Development Project and Dilworth as well. So that's kind of the concept and idea for tax increment financing, is that there are costs associated with these projects that are eligible activities. There's a limited scope of those eligible activities, demolition, some other kinds of activities, environmental activities as well. And you utilize the increased value based on private investment that happens on the property. So in this case, the properties, their initial taxable value is zero for that property. Once a house is built, then let's say it's $250,000 in that value. The taxes generated by that, there's increased taxes generated by that. Those taxes are captured for a period of time to pay off some extraordinary costs, the demolition of homes that are in that location, any of the environmental studies and surveys that need to be done, those sorts of activities. The unique aspect to this project is using a new tool that takes the difference between what someone can afford for a house and what it actually costs to construct it. So let's use that example, $250,000 to construct a house, that's its value. But based on all the numbers, they can only afford a $200,000 house. That $50,000 can become an eligible activity and be paid back over a period of time based on the taxes that are paid by that residence. So let's say, for example, it's $5,000 that are paid for those taxes over that 10-year period. That $50,000 can be reimbursed.
What happens to the taxes on all their homes in the neighborhood?
Doesn't have any effect.
Is that?
It's only on that particular property. Yeah. So each property has to qualify as a brownfield property. In this case, property owned by the Land Bank Authority automatically qualifies as brownfield property. So it's only based on the taxes generated by that specific piece of property. That's really no impacts on the other properties. So that will all come back to you through a brownfield plan. We're prepared that we'll go through all of those numbers and kind of allocate that. I think the request here is that we've been working a little bit on this, on the County Land Bank Authority properties, certainly some economies of scale to be able to do all of this at one time and provide that. If there's interest in the city in participating in that, can really, provide the project both on a construction basis and all the transaction activities.
Steve, please state your.
Who's in charge of
Steve, can you just state your name and address?
Steve, 437 South Street. So you said Boyne City's in charge. Who's in charge?
Yeah, it's a cooperative venture between the County Land Bank Authority, between the County Brownfield Authority, between the City Commission, Boyne City Commission, and the Charlevoix County County Commission. So all those parties have to approve this plan there.
So it provides a check and balance, so we don't just follow the leader with a lot of voice to get projects through.
All of those groups are impacted by the project, and the act says that if you have a county brownfield authority, the local unit of government has to concur with the brownfield. So that's making sure that everybody's on the same page with that. And in this case, Northern Homes would be the implementer of the project. They'd be the ones to develop the homes, find the individuals to sell the home to, and then would do that. After that point, when the taxes increase, the county treasurer collects those taxes and then would reimburse whomever would make those expenditures until those expenditures are paid off.
I have only great things to say about Northern Homes. When I first became disabled and had zero income for 3 years, they really went above and beyond and attempted to keep me in my home, which they did. And now things are better and I'm able to do other activities and help others in this community. But I would trust, what they do is in the benefit of our system or the citizen.
So glad you attended tonight. I'm glad you did. I have a question. Santa Cruz, 526 East Lincoln Street. I'd like to understand the mechanics a little bit more. So for in perpetuity, this trust of all those parties own the land. In perpetuity. Come back up. Okay.
No, Northern Homes Community Development Corporation will end up owning the land. We already have a community land trust that has 15 properties and 4 of them are in, 5 of them are in Boyne City. So it would just join our existing community land trust program.
Okay. And so then in the physical structure, whose name is on that deed?
So in a community land trust, the land is owned by Northern Homes Community Development Corporation. The improvements are owned by the property buyer, the home buyer.
Do they have any restrictions on what improvements they can make to that property?
So in our typical ground lease, we would build the home on the property and sell it to the home buyer. In our typical ground lease, we ask that they not increase the footprint of the house, so that it stays affordable for future families. If they want a larger house, they need to sell and move on. So, they can do typical improvements and maintenance on it, painting and maybe adding a deck or things like that. But, no, don't add any bedrooms or things like that.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. And that is, so at the end, you are a corporation. I know you have to do properties and what's called.
We're a 501c3 private nonprofit corporation, yes.
Okay, and then you have a board and they're compensated employees, correct?
We have a volunteer board and yes, compensated employees.
So is there something where the revenues are reinvested?
Our projects typically don't have revenues. But if they do, then it all goes towards our mission, which is for affordable housing. We have 3 lines of business. We do the home buyer, homeowner counseling, and then the both single family and multifamily developments.
I'm sorry, this is a fundamental question. It's never entirely been clear to me how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, is there any other public questions, comments? All right, go to work.
Yeah, to clarify, to an extent, for those of it that are that, the Northern Home Program, to an extent, if anybody in this room ever participated in an FHA program in the late 70s or early 80s, it's a shared equity program to an extent in that aspect. The biggest difference is, like Jane was saying, is that you do not own the land, you own the improvement. It has been a very good leg up for the teach a man to fish aspect, and it has worked. And I don't have any problem with that part of the program. If we're going on to talking about what we're talking about here tonight, I just for our properties on Main Street, the 635. Again, we talked about this in December, and Tom interjected with what had happened in the past. But I still believe that there's, I'd rather see speed over government on what we, I know ours is government. But I'm not a fan of putting 635 Main into the land bank and the Northern Homes project just because of the timing. And we are in, we are in such a crunch that we really could use it. I would like to find a more creative way of sharing, with a bid process, with a builder or something, and figuring that thing out to livable standards and working from that aspect on the 635 Main project. Now, there's only one house there, and then there's a lot. We talked about how we want to do either one of those, but those are just my thoughts on it. But as far as what Northern Homes program is, and that, it really has watched the health newer statements. So for sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious, more than anything, why the short span of the tip is 6 to 10 years versus sometimes up to 30?
We've had multiple discussions with the county already on this, and they indicated that was all that they were interested in.
The detail.
Just,
I think I'd like to get the revenues from the project, that period of time for tip capture is captured, doesn't go to the Texas jurisdictions, we go to pay off those costs. So their interest was to keep that time as short as possible. So after that time period, they realize those revenues along with the city and the other taxing jurisdictions.
What would be the time frame for this thing to start from today until they break ground and get building that something?
we were hoping this fall, next spring at the latest. It just depends on how long it takes to get through this process.
So this has been ongoing for a little bit, Dave. Well, so why have we been stalled? Why are we just barely here? I mean, we've had control, county has had control of the Christmas house for about 3 years now. And so I guess that's why I'm not a big fan of throwing 635 Main Street in there, because I think we can move faster and do something.
We have had multiple meetings with the county on this, trying to get them comfortable. It is a brand new idea, kind of taking a standard process where you really just in the past have dealt with properties that were contaminated and had major issues, and trying to apply that to a different type of property and a different process. And we spent a long time getting the county comfortable with doing that.
Can I just respond to that? I think that, as Jane said, that sort of once we're ready to go, and I think all of those pieces are in place to begin the work, that we have that identified, we have kind of concurrence of the county and the land bank authority and those sorts of things. So I think we're ready to move on that kind of land bank property. We can come through the brownfield plan approvals through the fall, basically, and have that completed, and then perhaps demolish or prepare the sites, be ready for construction in the spring. So I think the timeline for that component is pretty good. And I would imagine the idea is that this project would have that same kind of timeline. If the transfer went into the land bank authority, we could qualify it and wrap it through. So it would be, I think, a fairly reasonable process. It wouldn't wait another 3 years for the city property to go. It would go within this project for all of the work that has been done.
So what's the difference between what you're trying to do now and what you've done in the past with with the mission?
The difference is the whole brownfield aspect of it.
Okay.
We didn't do that before.
So with the mission program, state money, this program is local.
Yeah, and the
City,
reason we're not using the state money before anymore is because it's no longer available.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that was kind of one of the things that the whole discussion in 2019 with the community was about, is that there are no more funds coming from the state to really help small rural communities do affordable housing for local residents. So that's why we researched this type of funding strategy to see if it's something that we could apply in Boyne City. And part of the discussions with the county was, okay, we're going to test this in Boyne City, but it's not just going to be a Boyne City tool. We got to be able to do it in Charlevoix and in East Jordan also. So that's been a part of the discussion too, is kind of trying to figure out where the next project is going to be and lining those up too, and having discussions with the other communities and getting their support also. So the county didn't want to show favoritism to just Boyne City doing this. Let's, broaden it and make it available to the other communities and make sure that they are also interested in it. So it has been a long process.
Right. So, Marty, I'm frustrated too with the timeline, but I think everything's finally coming together. I think on this committee, housing solutions for the beginning, I guess, and Scott, Jane and I have meetings on county people and city of Jordan and city of Charlevoix, private banking, Charlevoix County Foundation. And I think in defense of the process is that Jane's right, it has having gone through all these counties, to TIF, to the Charlevoix County, and there was a lot of skepticism that we had to, that Jane had to prove that the confidence was there that this is a viable project. Also, I think the process was slowed down by COVID. It's at the wrong time. But here's an opportunity for us to put 3 houses and now 2 more into this project, and it makes sense. Marty, either way, I have no problem getting that property developed, but maybe we finally have the steps to get it developed this way, which would qualify through qualified buyer. And if we did it on our own, we, put out a bid for the property. We lose specification, lose the opportunity to say that this is a home that needs to be help out. We lose the opportunity to make this a home that qualifies for your buyer.
Right, or plan for the long term.
Yeah.
The long term, the short term, we will whatever restriction we want. So I understand what you said.
Okay. But I'm in favor of putting these 2 lots into the property because I see light at the end of the tunnel. And it's the fall or spring, it's great. And getting the opportunity to have 5 new homes on East Main Street for our local citizens is great. The process that we have cooperated with the county and the TIF and the TIF financing and all the other groups I mentioned. I think that shows how we have to tackle this housing issue. It's not a local issue, it's a regional issue, it's a state issue. And here we have some very creative ways of using tools we haven't used before deal with TIF and solving local housing for our local residents, our countywide residents. So, I'm in favor of throwing those 2 lots in for that reason, that would all be one package, and it would satisfy a very needed population, for housing for a very needed population.
Yeah. So in clarification of the equation that was thrown out there. So if we're looking at a 6-7 year TIF, And it's your numbers. The 250 to 200. And I'm not trying to hold you to anything. The math doesn't work. And if it's $5,000 taxes, that in no way is the affordable housing that we're talking about. So $5,000 to pay back this program over 10 years for that $50,000. And so are we going to get the bait and switch? Not putting that on you two. Are we going to get the bait and switch in the end where, okay, well, we need to be repaid $60,000. So where we thought it was going to be 6 years, it's now going to be 20 years. And reason number 952, I know.
That was, is.
I'm not getting that on anybody.
Yeah, no, I never thought we'd do a $50,000 subsidy to the home buyer. It's going to be a gap, but it's going to be a very manageable gap. I was thinking more around the $20,000 range.
So you're going to match the gap to whatever the TIF would be.
Yes, yeah.
It will be, when it comes back to the brownfield plan, is that all those calculations will be in there. I was probably a little quick on the example there, but and that was just kind of for illustrative purposes.
I wasn't trying to be smart.
No, that's okay. No, I understand. And you raise a great point, is it's got to be that, and you don't want to be in a situation in that sense that, it's going to say that this will be, that term will be set. And so it won't go any farther. It'll be incumbent upon the project to generate those taxes, and you're only responsible for those taxes. But I think those are questions that we'll work through in terms of the numbers, look at all of those pieces and see what actually is possible based on the projected assessed value, the resultant taxes, because they will be homesteads. And so they won't have the 18 notes to be able to be captured. And so or state education tax. So we'll have to rely on local tax. And so we'll have to look at what those numbers are and how long that payback might be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little longer. The other thing to your point, Tom, is I get it. We already have a housing commission. And we already have homes right there on Main Street. I don't know why we couldn't, try to figure out something on 635 Main Street and throw that right into the mix of the community housing that we already have, Michael. So.
Do you mean the housing commission?
Yes.
They don't have funds for development.
Oh, I understand it. It would be a city project and then we, coordinate.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
For them to manage.
Yeah.
But
And my vision on that project, is that this isn't turning the builder loose to see what he, turn this into and make this grandiose project, try to make money on, it would be, set from day one. Here's what we're looking to do. Here's where we're looking for affordable housing. So, and I understand that there's not going to be, all these contractors, tripping over themselves trying to, make minimal dollars to try to help the city with an affordable housing project. But I think there's different ways to look at it that, we possibly get it done. Even if, like I said back in last December, the Habitat for Humanity style, only Boyne City version, just my thoughts.
Yeah, and those are good comments. I just don't think right now, there's not contractor that I know of that would jump at the opportunity to build a 1,100 square foot, 1,000 square foot home, or smaller or bigger. The numbers don't work. I was crunching numbers all day. The numbers don't work. I think we can clean our hands of this and still win. I think we can clean our hands by turning it over to the land bank. And they're the ones that have margins to make it work. I think if we went out and set our own standards, like you said, we want a 800 square foot home built on a slot, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. And here's the specs and there's our expectations. I don't think we would get one bid So maybe we should try that, but I think we already have the tools in place to make these two projects work. And then we don't have to get in the process of trying to build homes, which is not our expertise. When Northern Homes, that is their expertise. So,
But I'll respectfully disagree with you for the size of that home. I not only think, I know. And still can be done.
Any other questions?
you had your hand up earlier, Mike.
No, I was just going to give some background with regards to the properties at the bottom of the hill. The commission would like it, but I agree with the recommendation that we have with these folks. This is their expertise. Jane knows real well the abilities of both Northern Homes and the Housing Commission, as previously serving as the executive director for that. They've been stymied with their lack of funds, as Jane mentioned before, coming through the state and the feds. There's a lot of talk about it, but we haven't seen the money coming for affordable, attainable housing at this point yet. And that's why we acquired the property at 635, was to have it, be brought back into the marketplace for people. We bought that as a tax reversion property. So again, and the intent was to capture it and then hopefully get it to either Northern Homes or to the Housing Commission to use that. The Housing Commission has basically said multiple times that they just don't have the resources. Here's a tool that gives the resources to get the development done. So, and with all the other things that we have on our plate, whether it's marina or other things, we don't have the bandwidth to take on a housing project right now. I'm not sure if the Housing Commission does either, but I know they don't have the resources.
Any other questions? So I got some good questions. So breaking ground this fall potentially, what would be your projection on the project completion? Obviously, 1,000 different what else could happen, but if you did hit the ground this fall, what would be your best estimated projection on completion?
Probably on the construction process. That's the demolition.
But to clarify, you're going to start with Christmas house first. This would be the second.
I would want to try to do all that at the same time.
So Mike, one of my questions to you is the viability of the property. What does the city see, any use of this property? But you just said that the city bought this with intentions of giving it over to Northern Homes to the Housing Commission. What timeline did the city acquire the property for that intention?
Boy, it's about 4 or 5 years ago now.
And in that 4 or 5 years, has the city ever advertised that? Has the city-
No. Again, that's one of the 2 parcels that are there. There was an existing parcel immediately to the east of 635 that the city's owned for, I don't know how long. And that was just sitting there as vacant property.
So it's 3 parcels.
I'm only aware of 2, the one at 635 and the one immediately to the east.
I thought that's all about. Let's do that.
Yeah, that's what I just said, 2 properties.
Okay. I thought you said there was another.
No, sorry, I meant those 2 properties.
So I'm thinking like right in the middle of it. So you said in your report, did the previous commission, what was it, last October 12th, 2021, they approved that resolution in regards to the TIF, support for the TIF. Did you guys have interest in these 2 lots back in 2021? Was it on the radar of the city and, was the conversations there?
Didn't really come back onto the radar until I heard that the commission had discussed it in December. It's like, yeah, we could put it in this project.
Okay. December. Now, as far as like a timeline that you need to know, because like Marty was saying, advertising this, putting bids out. I mean, it sounds like the city's had 4 or 5 years to do that process, or to see if interest has been there for 4 or 5 years. Shame on us being so close to this project and having a hey now to see if it's gonna roll into another project. If the city took 30 days to advertise it, to, see if bids, would that completely derail Northern Homes' interest in those 2 lots and combining it with their project? Would it not make it viable?
We'd have to, I guess if you're going to go through a bid process, at that point, we would have to decide whether or not we wanted to bid on it. And be a winning bidder or not. So I really can't, I haven't thought of that process. We would move forward, with the 3 so that we can get the house demolished. I would rather move forward and get the house that's existing at the top of the hill, demolished. So we can move forward with that project.
Right. This has been an interest of mine, well, it's not been an interest of mine, but it's a commitment that I made, housing and housing solutions for the community of Boyne. Does the commission see an option in regards to saying no and doing a bid process and seeing what that looks like?
So to clarify one of your questions, when we bought it, the reason for buying it was the thought process was that was going to be part of the bike path. But then we found out that the property that we thought the bike path could go over was private property. It got bought up and is no longer the railroad easement that was once slated to be. So that's how these came to be, correct, Mike?
I don't think not with regards to 635. That was acquired to potentially purchase it and use it for redevelopment. There was no discussion with regards to the trail. Again, the other property, as far as I know, has been in the city's possession for 25 or 30 years. So that would have long preceded that. And I also want to clarify, and Jane can speak to this matter too, with regards to 635. We've had discussions from before we even acquired it from the county, which is where we acquired it, with Northern Homes and the Housing Commission saying, okay, are you viable partners to kind of like we did with the White House, where we acquired the property, then helped to transfer over for redevelopment. And that's what we're looking at. But it was at about those times that the outside funding sources dried up and there wasn't the money to move forward with it. So we've been having continuing conversations even before we acquired that property with our local housing partners as to how can we turn that back into housing.
So
Initially, I was on the housing commission at that time, and we looked at the house at that point, and initially thought it was going to be an easy rehab project that we could then turn around and rent out as the housing commission. But the more we looked at it, the more we realized that the water had been sitting within the crawl space for so long that the wood has really rotted. And it was just taking, the further we explored, the more we realized the work needed to be done to it. And so it wasn't really gonna, the income from the rent was not gonna cover our costs for doing that. We didn't have any other source of funds. So, so that was kind of the beginning of it. And since then, there really hasn't been any other funding come along to help us do any kind of project, either through the Housing Commission or through Northern Homes.
To your question, as far as putting it up a bit, I think with your comments and how I feel about it, I can't speak for George and Tom, but if you're trying to keep it as affordable housing, you're gonna have to put some pretty heavy restrictions on how it could be rehabbed or whatever, and then be sold. So I don't know I don't know where that process would go to. If you're just gonna put it on the open market, that's a different aspect, but then at that point in time, it takes on before.
Yeah, we agree with what you're saying, Mike, that if we, back when we created housing solutions, Scott can help me out here, but we were tasked with this, trying to take down every barrier that's the property that the city owned. And this was two, we have some up in North Boyne, up by the, so we own DPW. The idea is to, how can we get these developed? And here we are 3 years later, we still haven't developed. So I agree with you that, not contiguous. How can we do this? But I just don't think there's any interest on the open market. I can be wrong. To take these two pieces of property that are the margin, as James said, the margin is not there for a private developer to take that and work with it. That's probably why it's never been developed before. And so therefore, Jane has the tools to make the numbers work using the TIP money and the brownfield money. And I don't think a private person has the access to those government entities, and therefore I think we're going to be sitting on another 10 years if we don't. Well, we could go a 30-day bid, I suppose, but I don't think that would be in the best interest of Boyne City. We have an opportunity to add these with three other lots. Let's do it. You're done.
No, I just was thinking, I guess we open up, you have 30 days, that open the door for anybody who wants to go anything. Somebody.
Well, you still put restrictions.
Put restrictions on it, yeah.
That's all right. We say we're selling that, but yeah, I'm confused on that part. So we're selling a lot, but you can only buy the lot if you only build a house that's going to fit this market.
Correct. Bingo. I mean, you put whatever restrictions you want on the and to that effect, nothing against Jane's program, but we've all seen the $500 hammers and that's and everything like that. I mean, I think that I know there's people that can build 1,000 square foot house and still make money on it and sell it for, less than $200,000. So that's the point. But
I respectfully disagree with the numbers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jane and I sat down with numbers. I sat down with your builder.
I did it last year.
Well, I compared my numbers with Jane's numbers, and
What's just upsetting from my position is we had for X amount of time and nothing has been done for X amount of time. And this is tied to a timeline of action. So if we say no, that is a lot of work and this should be an agenda item until like POA's solid plan of action is put in place. And what that property is going to be utilized for, how it's going to be advertised, how we attract developers for it.
is that a 55-foot line, Jane?
So, yeah, 15 years.
So this third lot, because there's actually two. I mean, there's these two that are right next to each other that's owned by the city. And then there's a third lot, not in tangent, but you skip one parcel. There's another lot that's directly on Grace Lane that's owned by the city as well.
I think there's like a small creek or drainage ditch or whatever running through that,
Not
which makes it not attractive.
Gotcha.
I would have to go out there.
No, you're absolutely. I agree. It comes across from.
Yeah.
It comes down, it comes down the hill and across the other. It's not a buildable lot.
Okay. So if the city, if the commission advertised that property for 30 days, would that derail the opportunity for you guys to incorporate this in the project?
Well, there's quite a bit of, activity to be done to transfer to the land bank authority, prepare the brownfield plan. To do that, at the point in time that the brownfield plan is approved, that kind of is mean that it wouldn't be included within that project. So some determination as to whether that could be included. There's some flexibility and work at night to add it in if you decide at the last minute to do it. So, that opportunity might be there, especially if we're looking at a more September time. I think the challenge, and I'll just say the challenge is a couple of things, is that a lot of people that are working on housing, it's difficult to do affordable housing without some sort of subsidy, some sort of write down in that way, whether it was mission of funding previously, other sources of funding. And in this case, we found a source of funding that is long-term, but is a write down basically for the cost. So, and this tool is only available through the land bank authority because of the restrictions of the act.
Right.
And the time frame, to sort of to do that, a number of old projects where you deal with that. There's quite from a response to a bid there, and then the contractual arrangements to do that, and all of those kind of pieces. It would be a few more months before you'd actually have a signed contract with somebody to have the limitations to have that laid out and to do that. So the commission's got to approve that sale, got to go through the stuff, they've got to go through their environmentals, they've got to do all of those kinds of things. So I think if it's a 30-day process to get the answer to that, you might get some interested bids, but kind of to sign up on the dotted lines. You're going to have affordable housing, we'll have some additional steps. Probably by that time, the ship would have been sailed on the brownfield. It can always be amended and added in at some point in time. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But at least that. But that's another kind of transaction cost. I think the advantage that we're seeing here is that all the stuff that's happening on the last kind of land bank authority owns. It'd be a very small incremental margin to add the other property in for all of the work that has to be done to make that happen. So I think that's what the proposal idea was.
I would think that there is for us to put it on the market, just test the waters. It's not a 30-day process. I'd say it's a 3-month process. Again, it's a good expertise, but a survey is 60 days out. You can't get a survey right now.
The city hasn't done a survey in 4 to 5 years that it's owned it.
No.
I mean, it's just not going to happen as quickly as it might happen. But this could happen. There's on spring, fall to spring. It's also the whole philosophy that we've been working together. The city of East Jordan the school has 12 lots. The city of Charlotte owns some lots. We're all working together with these into this program. And so we can put 5 in instead of 3 in. It's a win-win situation. And we're gambling that timeline and that process against the potential that in 30 days, some developers are going to come and buy these 2 lots and Boyne City wins because we make money. No, I think Boyne City wins because they are providing us the tools in the process to get 2 houses there quicker, in my mind, quicker than the process of us going out to a bid, hoping that the developer will build a house that we want to build on that property. And it's like,
I didn't use the word developer, but I get where you're coming from. I was looking at just a local contractor because it's small in size, it's actually something that could be done.
Right. Developer got it. Mr. Mayor,
I was going to expand on Tom's comments. When we purchased the property from the county, it was for tax reversion. If we sell that property, we can only charge, we can charge whatever we want for it. We only paid a couple $1,000s for it. And if we get more than that, the additional money has to go to the county. We cannot make a profit on that property.
So no profit.
Not by us, no. That's only on the lot for 635. Again, I'd have to check back on how the other 2 or the other lot adjacent to it was acquired. If that was a tax reversion, the same thing could potentially apply to that. I do not know.
I was on the answer. That's a better answer. Now you know you can find somebody that you can partner with and say, okay, if my partner is saying, all right, pick your person in this room, we can only make $5,000. I'm selling you this house for $5,000. Here are your restrictions, and here's what you're going to do with it in the end. So you sold it, you've made the county happy, you've made this developer contractor, who whatever you want to call it, that can get it done. And again, you know, we can pick the number. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess when I said, there's your answer, I'm saying.
Well, the
I
answer is that.
assume that Tim, your intentions was to put it out in the market so that we can make some money.
Money's coming from there, yeah. But there's the answer.
Which we can't, because we cannot make, we have to pay back. We can't, the extra money over and above the taxes that are due goes to the county.
And I would want to look into that, because I think there's a timeline on that as well. Because if you lost your house, okay, the new statute is that if you lost yours to tax foreclosure, meaning you didn't pay your taxes for the 3 years, and the county took your home and you owed $8,000 in taxes, and they sold your home for $250,000 on the open market, they can only keep $8,000 of that money. The rest goes back to you. That is new state law. But with that being said, you also have to file that paperwork in a timely manner. And so I think there's a little bit more to that process. And I think that as long as the city is owned it, I don't know that would be true. I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm just saying that I don't know that.
We're past public comment with the commission. Do you against listening to public comment?
No, I think we've been there.
Okay.
Let's keep the process. Just one thing for clarification. 15 High Street. If you sell a lot on the open market and restrictions for affordability, that's a one-time deal.
Doesn't have to be, you could ride with the deed.
But Jane's proposal is it's automatically going to be that way. Portable in the affordable pool forever. You're right.
Okay.
We may have control.
With colas and something.
You may have control maybe once, maybe twice, and it's gone.
From my understanding, my realistic understanding, the incumbents can ride with the deed. Do whatever he wants.
Yeah, Charlotte has developed a deep restricted program that.
Right. I was gonna say, I know another country, she has a town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one you have. not-
Just say your name and.
I'm Sandra Fisher, this is Lincoln. You had an option to table. It's always like to be up and down. And then the second part is, I think everybody realizes people want to own the dirt. And it's an upside. They want to own the dirt. Thank you.
All right, so back to the board. Did you have a comment before I go back to board?
Yeah.
Just state your name real quick.
My name is Michelle Roger, my address is 401 West Michigan. And I think we need to look at this as what actually serves the greater good of the community and for what period of time. And if it's just that unused and not really making any income all this time, why not give a gift to the good cause that will benefit the people that live in our community? And spending the money that a lot of people don't even want. Let's stick to the issue of getting affordable housing for citizens of this town.
All right, back to the board.
That was hilarious. I think we wouldn't get anybody out of this.
Yeah. I don't want to table it because it's been to do tax for 45 years for these two pieces of property. I don't want to continue comment that's called kicking the can that you're over and over and over and over again in chambers. If we all don't agree to northern homes and we think there's a potentiality in a developer with restrictions, if that 30 days, I don't really get a yes or no, but I think it's more of a would make it hard. It wasn't a direct no. It would make it harder, but an amendment is a possibility, but we would have our answer. And then there's no back and forth. There's no what is down the road. There's no, I mean, an ideal situation is we acquired it 45 years ago. We had a survey done because it was the intention of the property from the beginning. And Jane came back to us in January after December, when it was brought up in December. That's best case scenario. We're not there. So meeting in the middle on that, those are kind of my thoughts. If it doesn't completely derail your project and the possibility is still there and the potentiality is still there, if we can advertise it, and we have an answer on if there is a local developer that has the means and has the interest, we'll know. And I would say, let's make sure it's on the agenda in 30 days.
Jane, so if everything, if your timeline works and everything, so and this is kind of back to your comments on that. We got East Shore, we got Charlotte Boyd, we got Boyne City. So if you get Boyne City's lots ready, who's going first? Who's getting done? I mean, so if we get all our lots ready, and then now we're down to, well, boy, it was close, baby, but Charlotte Boyd beat you by a day. So we're building their 10 homes, and then we'll get on to yours. I don't know, it'll be somewhere in about 2026, 27. We'll get to it. Don't worry about
No, Boyne City is the one that's up first.
it. Period.
Yeah.
That's been determined by our committee, yes.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion? Jane, yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, I just, in respect to what you said, Tim, that when you were saying, okay, in 30 days back on the agenda, I just don't see that happening. I don't think the city can do everything necessary, real estate law wise, put something out on the market, and get an answer within 30 days. They're not very desirable lots to begin with. But right now, we've been working with this group for 3 years. To come up with a solution. These 2 lots were a common sense addition to the Christmas tree lots. I think that, yeah, I disagree with your assessment that we can be back in 30 days with the clear cut answer. I don't think we can. It's been taking 3 years. Let's keep moving forward.
Okay. Any other comments? Jane, yeah, Mike.
I'd concur with Tom's assessment. I think you're looking at a minimum of a 60-day process, probably. I'm thinking that if, there's been some general talk with regards to adding some conditions and parameters with regards to what we'd want to propose out there. I'm almost thinking that would have to come back at the next city commission meeting saying, okay, here's our draft proposal. Is this what the commission was thinking of? And then give the people maybe, 30 days after that. So I'm thinking you're probably going to be the last meeting in August or the first meeting in September to do a meaningful process.
Those timelines that Tom and Mike just mentioned, is that derail the project?
We'll move forward with the Christmas house just to keep the project down.
Okay. All right, I think we've had discussion on the motion at this point. The recommended motion is right here.
I'll make a motion to consider the request from the executive director of the Northern Homes CBC to approve transfer of the 2 lots at 635 East Main Street to the Charlotte County Land Bank to be included in the brownfield redevelopment plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jessica, roll call please.
Moody. Needham.
Aye.
Lassiter. Mayor Jack.
Aye. All right, thanks, Jane.
Great discussion.
Moving on to agenda item B, new business, granted this contract renewal proposal.
As you may recall, last July, the commission approved the one-year contract with Granite to provide their address identification services. Just to refresh, this is a service that they review all various advertising platforms for short-term rentals, and accumulate those and create a database and online platform the city can use. And in our discussions, I think that data is very valuable. It's, gives us some really good information to work on. As you may recall, the initial contract was approved in July. We didn't get that first data until October because that first time you enter the program, they have to create that data and they create the platform and it takes some time to get that started up. And now that we're in the program, they have offered a one-year extension of that for a price of $6,740. And that's based on a per unit price, a per listing price, and they base that on 221 listings. That's basically what they think an average is through the year. So, and that's the same as the initial one. But this price has gone up a couple dollars a unit, so that's why it's a little more than what we paid last year. It's about $6,200. This is contract does expire tomorrow. So if we do not extend it and we do move forward with an ordinance, in my opinion, you would have to have this service to move forward with any kind of meaningful ordinance. There are other companies out there that do offer this service. The one other company in our area that was on the team that we looked at was Hamari that Harbor Springs uses, and I did contact them and got a quote from them, and their initial startup was $8,000, and then $7,500 for after that for 2 years. But you could go year by year by year. And if you may recall, back in last July, I also got another quote from Logic Rev. And their quote was an initial fee of $2,000 to develop the platform, and then $10,000 for 2 years. So it's a $22,000 cost for that one, which was not even close to being competitive. So I think that was worth considering. I do believe this is probably one of the most economical ways to go. I did talk with a city manager from the city of Steve, I believe, yesterday, and he called me looking for information about this company and wanting to know how our operations going, how it's doing. So I gave my opinions on that, and I asked him what their cost was, and they said, well, we did the initial assessment and they had us about 150 units. And they were going to charge them $8,000 for the initial startup fee. So I think the price they gave us is really competitive. So, like I said, I do recommend continuing on this data for 2 reasons. One, if we do move forward with an ordinance, it's going to be something that we're going to have, and we can, add on services to this if we need to. And 2, we haven't had that data for completely. So I think it's important to also see the seasonal fluctuations, if there are any, in that short-term rental market. So I think that's also a valuable aspect. So with those comments, I would recommend the city commission approve the 1-year extension of contract with the Granicus, this price of $6,740. Answer your questions.
Is there any public comment? Questions?
But if we can tell our referral on West Michigan Avenue, this company, if we extend the contract, what new information are they going to provide? Or what will they actually do to help create the ordinances that you need to carry out your plan?
What they would just continue on with the service that already provided. That service is address of education. And that is solely the contract is for what contract. So that proposing any additional services.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, before I close? Okay, go break to the board. Questions, comments? George?
That's got. It gets to think, we really need this real-time information that they provided already, which has been very valuable. You know, to move forward with the ordinance and pass something, get it going. I guess I'm just not in favor of spending $6,000 of change for something that I'm not sure that we need at this point. You know, my thought is, so we pass an ordinance, we get it up and running. You know, can we go back to that and say, okay, now can we contract you for our, what we need to.
But I think the cost is going to be more. I think you're going to be paying more because they're going to have to reestablish that data. So once this expires, they're going to no longer be reviewing the websites for Boyne City data. So that's going to be done. So we're going to have to reestablish that. So then we start up a cost again. And then, you know, like I said, I think the price that they gave us is pretty competitive. I think if we go into the future, that's going to go up.
How much is there?
Well, like the city of Mastique, you know, they were priced at $8,000, and they were having about 150 units. So they were probably at $2,500 for a startup cost to them. The lodging rev, that was a $2,000 cost. The Hamari, I believe that was about a $500 cost, but they're also, they were higher from year to year. So there's going to be that startup cost again. And then I think they're probably going to adjust the number of units to a higher number. So you're probably going to pay it. You know, there may be a savings, but I don't think it would be a large savings.
Yeah, I'm also part of this because we are at a point where we're unfinished business. We're writing an ordinance. We need to pay for knowledge, pay for information. So be it. It's money well spent. It gives Scott the tools that he needs to make good decisions to write an ordinance. It gives Scott the tools that he needs to justify what and explain how he came to those conclusions. And it's good information. And I don't think $6,740 is exorbitant in any way. And if we ask Scott and the planning department to come up with those numbers, that research, that data on their own, it would cost more than that. So,
It'd be fast.
So Scott, the commission voted on this last July, I think it was $6,000.
6,200.
Yeah, and that wasn't started.
That was, they based it on solely 221 units at $2,850.
Okay, but that wasn't the whole cost.
That was the whole cost.
Okay, so I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to figure out, to George's point, if we stop it, because we've seen the year review, we've seen some of those ebbs and flows. We talked about it even at the last couple of meetings. You said you can kind of see the summertime ramp up.
We had to see it go down, so we don't know.
Well, but we did. We saw it. We saw it last fall. We saw, you know, we saw a little bit of the down, and then we see it come back up in the I'm not trying to argue, I'm just saying. So, you know, if we postpone it, we've already got the knowledge. I don't see this giving Scott any more knowledge than he already has, but you know, with respect to your comments. I agree that it's been good information. I guess in the talks that we've had so far, you know, it seems to be, I'm not trying to speak for this board, but in some of the banner that whatever we do is probably going to start on a calendar year. So that's 6 months. That's $3,800. You know, that we say to put toward next year. In my thought. With that also being said, I have a real problem paying for, you know, 36 units of a hotel. And if they're $3.05 a piece, which is what this equates out to, 221. You know, that's $1,100 I'm paying them for something that's in the name. It's Water Street Inn. I mean, it's what they are. It's a condo hotel. It's not a, you know, it's not a short-term rental. It's a really short-term rental. You know, you can rent it by the hour. If you want.
Well, I think you need to realize what they do. What they do is they review all the listing platforms. So if a hotel lists on one of those listing platforms, they're going to put it on as a short-term rental. Yes. So they don't discern what type of unit it is. They're looking at all the platforms and identifying those listings and providing that information.
I guess I look at it that there has been a decent tool. It's got you a lot of good information and you given us a lot of good information. I don't see what a 6 month, you know, hiatus of it would be. And especially when you answer my question that $6,200 was for them to identify everything. So if it's $7,000 for them to identify everything, we say $3,800 it's going to be. Thank you.
Just a couple of points real quick. What was the timeline of the drought in units? When you and Marty were, of course, talking back and forth.
I don't see it. You got the first data in October, it was 125. And that has gone on ever since.
Okay.
Never. So I expect to be around, but I don't know that. So we have a full year data, we can't be able to.
Did Beth give reasoning as to why, and I think I heard you mentioning something about it, the inflation on the per unit to the 3050?
No, I'm assuming their cost is pretty slightly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see anything getting cheaper anytime soon, including like no. For 6 months out, puts us in January. How, with your expertise, how far do you think we are from an ordinance?
I don't, I think we'll have a lot better idea on 60. As we come back with some of the comments that you made last week, that you believe. Good idea. I don't think that versus the final. I would expect that. I think it's realistic to say we did it next year. In fact, the point that we want to save money and save $3,500 rate. I'm not sure that you're going to realize this. See it.
Right. Does Granicus offer anything beyond the 12-month agreement?
They don't like it. They want to see more.
When you say they don't like, is it they just don't offer it at all, or do they
Well,
increase the
offer it.
per rate?
They try to do that to get to the program. I think they prefer.
Are the rates discounted with multiple year or no?
I didn't offer, he didn't offer me a multiple year contract, so I couldn't see that to them, but on the other ones, for Lodge and Rabbit, it was the same, and then for the Martin, the first year was more expensive, but the next 2 years were the same, at $7,500.
Right. I see the importance in it. And I'll just say this, everyone's made comments on your presentation, Scott, and the data that you collected in those presentations. And obviously, I mean, I'll let you speak for yourself. What tool did you utilize to build your presentations off of?
Tools, I don't like data, grants.
Right.
And then I use my GIS program. So.
Right. For me and my decision, it's really come down to a timeline and just knowing that we just, there's a question mark. That's the only thing that keeps coming up and trying to figure out how close we are to an ordinance. So I don't know if we're gonna have an ordinance in December or January. And then if what you're saying is true, that the cost could go up. I think the units are gonna go up, because that's something I've been tracking as well. There's units has consistently gone up. I haven't seen them drop yet. So in January, I'm expecting units to be up versus where they're at now. Is there a reason why they billed us for the 221 last year and 221 this year?
They didn't give me a real good rationale on why they use the same number, but given that we have 286 listings.
Right.
it was gonna take-
Right, let's do some math real quick. So we're at 286 right now.
Before the record, the cost is $500.
Yeah.
I said the record cost is $500. So to say that, we don't know what the increase will be.
Right, yeah, but they use the same number of units, where they could instead.
Right, yeah, but so the inflation part is a per unit, that went up to the 3050. So if they got us at 286 at 3050, that's 8,723. So if we don't increase by 1 unit between now and January, which from my tracking this since, I've been involved in
It's 305.
for one. So 1 year contract based on 221, that's at 30.
Can I make a comment? Jim?
Yeah.
A 1 year, what we've done so far is a 1 year, that's a snapshot. 2 years, you can start seeing trends and more data. Let's give our staff from the department the tools that he's requesting. It's that simple. And the community has supported this process. And the community has supported the data that has been found through this process. And I think the community would be very supportive of spending $6,740 to build this gathering a lot of valuable information. The second year gives us so much more information as to was the first year just trends and modalities, or was it really see trends in it 2 years?
I agree with all that. It really is coming down to a savings possibility or potentiality for me. And going off from units has not decreased, units has gone up. We're getting a discounted rate currently if we're at would you say again, 268, right?
296 listings.
Would start with
Well, there's about 290 listed.
our units.
Yes.
No, listing, my bad.
Yeah, the price.
So let me read this over quick. The proposal from Granite is for a 1-year contract based on 221 listings at $30.50 per unit for a total price of $6,740. They have us at 220 listings. We are not at 220 listings though.
Yeah, check today, the number of listings that are on that site.
Okay, so.
But that's a list, not.
So that's what they base their
Right. But just to clarify, I think you're trying to figure out the question on the.
Well, that's basically what I'm trying to figure out is if they build this accurately right now, what it would be. Because if we didn't go up by one listing at all between now and January, which I'm gonna go off from history as an example, I'm not gonna go off from any what ifs. It has not gone down. It has consistently gone up every single time. So if we're big gamblers right here with our pockets, the taxpayers' pockets, and say, now one listing's gonna go up, we're at 290 right now, what would that price be in January? What would that price be right now if they got us at 290?
Well, they said, okay, your number is 290, so we.
Times 30/50, right?
Yeah, if they-
Okay, great. That's exactly what I'm intending to do here. So. Yep, and we run the risk of them billing us at the accurate amount of listings if we don't take this.
Plus the charge.
But there wasn't a charge.
You said first time, but like I talked to somewhere in NSP, they charge 10. So I think they're beginning to do that like the others at NSP.
I know the risk. I know the savings. Is there any other questions or comments? Mike, did you have any questions or comments or any recommendations?
No, I was doing the quick math on the 296 units that Scott came up with, and it was a figure of just a little over $9,000.
Right. Okay. All right, with that said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations from planning director Scott Pearson to approve benefits for a 1-year contract for short-term rental and trust identification services for a total price of $6,740.50.
Is there a second support? Second. Okay. Roll call please, Jessica. Yep.
Our contract is done.
Meehammer,
Aye.
Lassiter, Hamtramck,
Aye.
Moody,
Aye.
motion carried.
All right, moving on to new business, agenda item C, pickle court grant improvements fee. Phase 2.
As the city commission may recall, earlier this year, the commission approved applying to the Charlevoix County for $8,951.42 in funding for additional fencing and new benches for our pickleball courts in Rotary Park. This was a request, was submitted and then approved by the county. We have requested that the original quotes that we received in December and January be updated for your review and consideration. Harbor Fence said that they will maintain their earlier quote, although their pricing for the fencing has increased. And we received the final quote on the updated benches on Friday. When we got quotes on the benches originally and also this time too, there were 2 suppliers that we had reached out to. BSN Sports out of Dallas, Texas. They were the lowest price both then and now. And their price currently is $3,602.31. And that's an increase of $158 from their quote of December. And that reflects an increase in the delivery charges. The price of the unit, the benches has not changed. The other quote that we received was from another company. Their quote was for the same type of benches were $4,400. And that was a $680 increase of their earlier quote of $3,720. And those include for both of them, the benches and the delivery. Anything above what the county awarded us at the $8,951.42, we'd be responsible for. So basically that $158 we'd be responsible for. We do have the funds available in the parks budget for that. If the commission approved this today, Harbor Fence indicates that based on their schedule, we would not see the new fencing in the pickleball courts until probably next spring. The contractor at BSN Sports indicates that their benches are in stock and could probably be delivered yet this month, so used for the rest of the season. So it's our recommendation that the city commission authorize staff to proceed with the ordering of the additional fencing from Harbor Fence Company in the amount of $5,507 and the 8 benches from BSN Sports for $3,602.31 for the Rotary Park pickleball courts, as approved and a little bit over what was approved by the Charlevoix County Parks Millage of this year. Yeah.
Any public comment, questions? Okay, let me bring the board.
I'm in full support of the fencing. I have a question, Mike, on the benches. $3,600 coming out of Dallas, Texas. No local bids would beat that.
Not that we're aware of, no.
Are they constructed?
Hang on a sec. I believe they're resin material. They were green. I believe it was like a composite plastic. This was what Patrick, Tim, and the park board went over when they originally submitted this at the end of last year.
So it went through the plan. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you may recall that we had a number of people, interested parties from the pickleball courts that came up, and we ended up modifying the proposal to come up with a proposal that's on the screen now that shows this layout, which was revised from the earlier layout that the park board recommended. This was what the users of the courts recommended and was supported by the park board and staff.
Appreciate that. I'm in full support.
Yeah, that was my confusion. We already voted on this, the way that when we were moving, I thought this was being done, to be done by now. And so having to come back to us again is A, slightly frustrating, because B, I wasn't in, enormous support anyhow, because it seems that, quite a few, no toward the parks board, but, we've had quite a few of these requests for this pickleball court come and not other things, but, so this is about, when we started out with like, well, this is only $5,000 a year ago, we're, encroaching on, $20,000 now. So, there's a lot of frustration there that I thought it was already going to be done when we voted on it back. And here we are again. The $158, I guess. My question is, so, and just to be clear for everybody out there, Wi-Fi land, this is our money that we send to the county and they give back. So it's what we're doing is, giving it back to ourselves, which is fine, but the $158 I don't care about, but extremely frustrated with the process and how that went down.
Yeah, I guess just one clarification, that are we benches, we purchased of the 8 benches that.
Yes.
And then also
Correct.
benches.
Yes.
What's the, myself, what's the length of those benches?
Oh, hang on a sec here. That's what I wanted to say they are. I'm just looking to see if there is, yes. Yep.
So what's the warranty on those benches?
I don't know.
Who's installing them?
Our DPW.
From my understanding, so it's a commercial steel that's wrapped in like that rosin, so it's an all-weather essentially, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're permanently fixed, right?
To the ground?
Yeah.
They don't need to be.
Oh. So basically, the only cost out of the city's pocket is $158.
$8, correct.
Right, additional cost outside of the main money. That we gave her contact. All right, any other discussion, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation from the city manager, Michael Kane, to authorize staff to proceed with ordering an additional fence from Harbor Fence Company in the amount of $5,507 and 8 benches from BSN Sports for $3,602 for the Rotary Park football courts for the approved Charlotte County Artist Millage 2022 funding request.
Order second. Roll call, please, Justin.
Wexler.
Aye.
Nemecheck.
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Newcomb.
Aye.
All right, with that being the last agenda item under item 9, new business, we're moving on to 10, good of the order. Anyone have anything for good of the order? Marty and George?
I have one question for you, Spain. How many short-term rental places do we have on the list?
I don't know that we have any.
Are you planning for a few people to come?
I was just curious, I mean, because it's what Kevin's been telling us, so I just.
Fair question.
Yeah, and also for Chief Spade, watching the parade on board. You guys on bikes, it was so nice to see your officers interacting with the public. It was great, and I especially kudos to John Cloud. Every time I see John, he's kneeling down, or he's talking to a kid, or he's smiling and laughing, and just it's such a nice small town thing to see that you're officer engaging with people. Not just being a cop, being part of the community. Just I was real impressed. Again, especially John. And the other thing is, I talked to the guys down here, we're setting up for the Boyne Thunder. And you made comments, your police presence was astounding, during the event. And he was very impressed. He's actually from Clare. And he's got friends in Missouri, Clare, and told him you've done, man. It's just super impressed. How much presence you had now. Thank you. I'll pass that on. Appreciate that.
Anything else?
I disagree. I agree. I just, the comments he made earlier, sent up to our staff was great. George, the staff was fantastic. And I just agree with Mike's comment that all of us, the Jackson community, can make Boyne show off our assets during the 4th of July and Boyne Thunder. Everybody wins, and we do a great job at that. I appreciate it. Done well done.
Moving on to announcements, the next regular city commission meeting is scheduled for July 26, 2022 at 12 p.m. The next short-term rental work session meeting is scheduled for August 16th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. With that being said, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Second. All in favor? Aye.